Yes! That's good. Very good. You may have expected Papayo here, or P.Y. Anan Ado Boateng, as a host for the day. He's a great producer and filmmaker from Ghana, and he was supposed to fly in, but he hasn't made it, and there was some trouble with the visa getting into the country. So, luckily I was asked, and it's a coincidence that I'm here 2 days ago. I didn't know that I will be here and hosting this place here. I'm German and I have a German passport, so at the moment I'm allowed to stay in the country. I don't know how long I can stay in the country, as you know how the political situation is these days in Germany. So for me it's a good opportunity to connect with African and Afro diasporan filmmakers, because if I have to leave the country, I'm connected with my brothers and sisters, and I can make it maybe in Africa or overseas in the US. So I'm trying to do a good job so that you have me in a good memory. And to tell you in advance, I'm a very famous TV host in Germany. Almost everybody knows me. If you don't know me, I just wanted to say that. And I'm a very famous and a very good actor. I went to drama school in Germany and learned the Stanislavski system. So if you need a good actor as well, I'm here. So I'm saying this the whole day through so that you keep myself in mind. My name is Yared Dibaba. Don't forget that, okay? So please forgive me if I'm not very good prepared for today, but I'm trying to do my best as a TV host and journalist, and I'm very happy to be here, to be part of the family and to support this event here, because I think the AfroBerlin is a good platform here. And first of all, welcoming words from the lady who is organizing this and who has this idea and founded this as a marketplace for African and African diasporan filmmakers, and she's also the founder of the global operating foundation Yanibes, and she's trying to promote diversity in the film business and in the film production business, and bringing cultural sensitive narratives, news narratives in the film business. And I'm very glad that we met 2 days before here, otherwise I wouldn't have been here. Prudence, Kolong, welcome on stage with a warm applause.
What do you want me to say?
You say hello.
Hi guys. For people who know me, I'm not a big speaker, but thank you. The first thing I'm going to say, thank you so much for you being here over today, early on Sunday. It's the second edition of AfroBerlin. All right, an initiative that has started a while ago with the support of the European film market. The objective was basically to diversify our profile here at the Berlinale and give the opportunity to filmmakers from different background to come and tell a story on stage here. I have to thank so many people. All right. I wouldn't name them by name, but I will say thank you to all for being here, all right? You know what contribution you have for this event, and if it's a success, it's thanks to you. But I'm gonna go first to thanks to filmmakers that have been stomping the yard out there, trying to get the budget, trying to get their finance, trying to get their stories told, without whom, we wouldn't have AfroBerlin. So if there is AfroBerlin, it's thanks to you guys. All right, so AfroBerlin is an initiative that is free for everybody. You just have to register and just join the family, make it happen, tell your story, connect, and that's it. I'm sure I forgot loads of stuff, but I think the stress and all the stuff. But anyway, but I'm going to give the microphone to another lady here who is part of the family, who has contributed a lot in making this happen. Her name is Yana, right?
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much, Prudence. I'm very, very happy that we can make this happen again together, because we started having an eye on the African film industry like in 2017 when we established the Berlinale Africa Hub, which was in year one a great success, which is usually not the case, because when you do something new, then people need to get to know, and then the next year it works better. And this was back from the beginning as it was last year when we continued, luckily having AfroBerlin, because of course nice to have this big venue, to have super professional organizing all of this and really creating a program which comes out of the continent for the continent, because I mean we can only try to help, but you have the knowledge, you have the expertise, you have the network, and we're very happy as the EFM. I'm the head of marketing at the EFM, and we're very happy to have you and to have AfroBerlin in its second edition with 2 days. Last year it was smaller with 1 day, but this is what we like to do in partnerships. We go step by step, do something nice and decent in the first year, and then make it grow slowly so it can grow naturally, not impose something that is kind of wannabe something. So I think content-wise, you've said it already, because I think it's very important to create this bridge between the south and the north. And also our latest approach is that's not only about people coming from the south to the north, but also bringing people from the north to the south, because we can learn a lot from Africa. You know, sometimes things turn around in history. And for example, just to give you this one example, in Europe we are all totally dependent on our funding schemes and funding systems. It's great to have a funding system. I don't want to say anything against that, but you're depending on it. It's super bureaucratic, it's super complicated, and you guys know how to work with private. You know how to work with investors, private equity, and all those things are very interesting topics, you know. So I think we can really learn a lot from each other, and it's very important to create this exchange and to get to know each other and to learn from each other, so we can create something better, bigger, more equal, and more diverse throughout the years, with the help of AfroBerlin, for example. So thank you very, very much. And I also want to say everything that Jared has said is true. I'm German. It was actually really funny because we were working together on another festival, and I was very pleased to see him here. And this coincidence is really one of my main examples of like being at the right place at the right time is what always counts in this industry, right? Because everybody's looking for the same thing. So thank you so much for jumping in so quickly and for just like improvising all of this. And he's always doing the moderations in the Nordic Film Days. Imagine he's moderating the Scandinavian Film Festival in Lübeck, and it's really good fun. And I wish you 2 wonderful days full of insights, full of connections, and with a lot of laughter. Enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jana, for giving the evidence that I'm... Yes, I was hosting the Nordic Film Fest here in Germany because I'm very Nordic. So it's big fun to be here. And as a diversity trainer, I had the very first happy moment here on stage because we had already 2 women, strong women on stage here. It's not only men, and I think that's good, as Yanibes is promoting also diversity in film business. Just some information for you before we jump into the subject here. We have to keep the time schedule, so time is very tight. I'm talking very short in future. Register for the party tomorrow on Monday in the Angolan embassy, the after party. You can go on the website of AfroBerlin and register there and promote also what is happening here today. So we start with the first panel here on stage, and I'm looking forward to see a good chat and talk here on this panel. The headline is New Genres, Genre Banding and Blending. And you know, the film industry is always working in boxes, a bit of comedy here, a bit of action there, a bit of drama here. And the new African and Afro-diasporan filmmakers want to break this traditional structure. And they want to make it fresh and new, a new way of thinking. And I think this is the right thing. Just go with the flow and go with the time. So please welcome the next people here on stage. We will have, and I'm really very happy to meet her for my first time personally. She came from the United States as a producer, founder from Game Changer Film. She produced Real Women Have Curves and Dear White People. Effie TBrown. Then from my neighboring country, because I was born in Oromia in Ethiopia and he is from Sudan, so I'd like to welcome him with the tafaddal and salam alaikum. He is a founder from Deep Vision Productions. He's a director of the film Khartoum, which is also presented here at the Berlinale. Please welcome Ibrahim, Snoopy, Ahmad. So we go a bit further south to South Africa. The writer and director of The Heart is a Muscle, also a film which is performing here at the Panorama at the Berlinale 2025. Imran Hamduley, welcome. And I had a fanboy moment this morning because I met an actor. I saw him on an ARD series, and I thought, what a great actor! And I'm really happy to meet him here today. He's one of the new shooting stars in Germany, a great talent. He's a writer, producer, and director of the famous film, and he's an actor from Black Fruits here in Germany. Lamin Leroy. We flew him in from London. He's a journalist, he is a reporter for the Deadline magazine in UK and in Ghana. Zachary Ntim, welcome. He will host the panel. So you'll have the microphones here. Just one procedure for pictures. We have a photographer here, so he will take pictures while you sit here. So welcome this panel with a warm applause, and then it's open.
We good to start? We okay? Hello, nice to see you all. I don't think we got that much time anymore, so I'm gonna try and.
We have 5 minutes.
I'm gonna try and I'm gonna leave all like salutations to the side and probably start. But yeah, it's great to see you all. We're talking genre, and we're getting ready for this panel. Effie, I rewatched Dear White People, which was when it first came out, was really one of the seminal films of like my generation's film watchers. And so I hadn't seen it since I was like maybe 15 or 16.
Does it hold up?
It really does.
Okay.
And I ended up watching it a few times because I had to show it to some friends who hadn't seen it or hadn't remembered what we'd seen. And the thing that's quite shocking when you're watching it is, first, how much of it has influenced what has come after. Not even just film, like I'm thinking television, network television. But also how much it plays with the form. Like it's hilarious, but it's also quite terrifying. That's really built into the dialogue, the way that it's shot. And I wondered if you could start by speaking a little bit about first coming onto the film, but was all of that sort of subversive play in there at the start? Was it in the screenplay?
Yes. I'm going to put them up. First of all, I just want to say kudos to you guys for being up and here on a Sunday morning. So I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you. And it's really good to be on the panel with you all as well, because that's when give love. It's real out there. So thank you so much for talking about Dear White People. And it's sort of a little sad when you realize that like you've done a movie. You're like, when I was 15, and I was like, oh. You're like, yeah, I was 15 too when I made it, but no. But I appreciate that. And I have to say a lot of it has to go to the director, Justin Simeon, who is the writer, director of Dear White People. And he was it was on the page. And the only thing that I can take credit for is that I had an eye to see it. One of the first movies that I did, and I know you young people need to see it, it's called But I'm a Cheerleader, which is sort of in that same sort of vein, which is a satire. It's funny, but it's talking about something serious, which is the same thing for Dear White People, that sort of genre bending. And that's something that, like in the films that I make, like from doing The Inspection, what we co-financed with A24, it was a coming-of-age movie, but done sort of in a boot camp, sort of like Full Metal Jacket sort of style. So we try to give people something that you're used to, like a warm coat, like a sweater, like you're used to it, but we're gonna give you a little knowledge or a little education at the same time. So I know we don't have a lot of time, and I can talk a lot, so that's it.
One quick follow-up. How do you know that it's working? At what point do you know it's working? Because you can have it like on the screenplay, like, oh, this is interesting,
You
but
never know. I'm not a rich woman. Like, it's like, why am I not like, if everything was working so fabulously, I'd be like, the Amazon man, the Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know. And it's fun. You just have to have, belief. Right? I think when you're making your movies, you have to have the faith. I call them, and I'm not getting maudlin, but I call them deathbed movies. And I know it sounds like, what? But like when I'm dying, I want to be able to say, like, what did I do? How did I participate in advancing culture? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, for I'm a cheerleader, Dear White People, there's a couple of movies, but like, you never know if they're gonna work. Like, there's things that I've done that I'm like, I'm gonna be rich. Jason Blum, get out of the way. You know what I mean? Like, and then, I'm like, ooh, how am I paying my rent this month? You know what I mean? When it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't catch fire like everyone else, that you hope that it does. Yeah.
And Lamin, your show, Black Fruit, it's not fruits, it's fruit, singular. Just so everybody knows, you should go watch the show also. It's one of the first black queer shows in Germany. And as we were speaking before, it's a real sort of mashup of genre and style. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about the show, just so everybody can know a bit about it. But also, how did you figure out that sort of approach to the material was like correct for what you wanted to say?
Yeah, hi, first of all, thanks for being here, and I'm happy to be here. The idea of the show started, well, it's a dramedy, so it already is kind of a genre-bending show from the beginning, and it's kind of, but I feel like the idea of dramedy is really broad in a way too, because like a drama and a comedy can be so many things, but I think for me, it really started with a certain tonality, so I think the way that a show feels, or like the genre, was really one of the most important things, because the show is not necessarily super plot driven, like there's things happening all the time, but it's not like, that's why it was also really difficult in the beginning to pitch the show, because I was like, yeah, so these like two friends, they're in Hamburg, they're like living their lives, and people were like, okay, this sounds boring, and I was just like, okay, no, but it's gonna be really interesting and like cringe and funny, and these characters are gonna be very complex, and I don't know, I just felt like that genre was really hard to describe and like to make people excited about. So that was one of the biggest jobs, was to create that kind of treatment, or like the package, in ways in which I would like make some details very big, or like would describe certain scenes very specifically, even though it was just like a 10-page paper of the entire show, but just to really try to get across how I feel like the show will feel one day. And like, yeah, and so the show in the end, I think I was thinking about a tonality, but I wasn't thinking about being set on like one kind of tonality throughout. It was like there was an umbrella tonality for sure, but I also thought it was really important to surprise the audience, and to also have moments in which where the audience might feel kind of overwhelmed by like a change or something, especially if it's more more difficult topics or so. And I think what was really important too was that there is no, that the audience feels like they kind of can make their own decisions about how they feel about certain things in the show. And I think that would maybe, I don't know if that is a genre, but like we have no score, for example, and things like that. I think those things are very, different, I think, from other shows, and yeah.
So it was more a way of giving the audience agency, is that what you're kind of saying with the material?
Yeah, for sure, and kind of having them decide kind of how they feel. We tried it with music at some points, actually, like in the edit, and it just fell flat every time when we tried it. And I think the kind of show kind of lives from that. But people don't really notice. I'm noticing when I tell them, like when they saw the show, and then I would say like, oh, that we don't have music, and then they don't really notice, which I think is really surprising. I thought people would be very jarred, maybe even, that there's no music and things like that. But yeah, I think it's at times it's psychological, like drama. Sometimes it's like cringe comedy. Sometimes it's like absurd, even like to a certain degree. But I also feel like that's what life feels like. I don't know. To me, my main thing that I always say is I feel like the dramedy is kind of what life feels like the most to me. Like there are all these moments, it's sad and hard and funny and absurd and just kind of following that and seeing what these characters are doing, and then you kind of see genre out of that. But I didn't think of the genre so much before. I was just kind of thinking about what are they gonna do and what are they, yeah, kind of that.
Oh, wonderful. Ibrahim, you have a film that's playing at Berlinale this year, Khartoum. Round of applause. He has a film. And it's a really interesting project that has some co-directors, and it moves across form. You have animation, you have green screen. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about the construction of the film.
I always struggle to describe the film because it has so many things and elements, and how it started and how it ended. It's a total different thing. But in a nutshell, is that the word?
You're doing great.
Oh, okay.
And it's an excellent movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to compete with them both.
Yeah.
And linguistically, I'm trying.
No, you're great. You're great.
So it's a feature documentary and 5 different lives, with 5 different directors. And at some point we were almost finishing the film, but then war happened and we had to pause production for a few months, and we had to reshape the story, and then being evacuated from Sudan to Kenya. And then we regrouped us as directors and producers, and what are we going to do with the film? Are we deciding to continue it or not? But then we decided this is a new kind of legacy thing, and this is like the last remaining shots of Khartoum, so we had to continue that story. And then we decided to bring the participants to Kenya because they were in danger zones. So after 2 months of back and forth, we finally located them, and then we got them to Kenya, and we all lived together, because we shared the same struggle, and that also enabled us to tell their stories also in a better way because we went through what they went through. But because we didn't have footage of them being out, getting out of Sudan, and it was dangerous, so we had to find an alternative of how to tell that part of their story in a creative way. So we referred to animation, interviews, something that we created called Dreamscape, also because we wanted to balance things between the sad part of their lives, but also the happy part, the hopeful part. So we created these scenes where they imagine themselves, or unleashing their imagination, what they wish to be and their hopes and dreams. So you see someone driving a motorcycle flying above Hollywood, you see kids riding a lion. I don't want to tell you a lot, but this is what we were doing. And we did a lot of green screen shooting too. And at some point, we didn't, we didn't replace the green screens with graphic, so you'd see the film in the making, in the film itself.
Oh wow, that's so interesting, and that's probably one of the most unique stories of genre subversion I've heard, where it's out of necessity, and I wondered, this is a bit of a heavy question, but I wondered, how do you think the violence that was happening, it obviously changed the material aspects of the film, but how do you think it changed the sort of, not philosophy of the film, but the meaning, the feeling of the film? How did it, because it changes you as people, so how do you think it changed the sort of the core of the film and the filmmaking?
I guess the story was just a poetic story about these different lives in Khartoum, and they weren't necessarily direct violence, but you can see it in their stories, the abuse that the city, was doing to them. But then when the war happened, we had to include that part because it's a major thing that's happened, changing all of their lives and 12 million people as well. But also, we didn't want to bring it on the screen, with all these killings and deaths, what you normally see on social media, on the news. We wanted to bring that violence, but in a more subtle way, something that visually won't be, that strong.
And how the thing I always find so interesting about hybrid films like this that move across genre and technique is the distribution of them. And I wondered, how are you thinking about screening this film? Because I feel like it's something that could work in the gallery space or in the cinema space. What do you think? What are you thinking about when you want to show this film?
Well, as filmmakers, you always want to go to the big festivals, get into fancy places.
Like Berlin.
Free taxi, but it wasn't free.
I didn't give you a free taxi.
Yeah, like someone picking you from the airport, but no one did. I'm not famous enough. And that motivates me, actually.
Where's the EFM woman? We need to...
I guess that, the festival run and all that, because, how it works. But also on the other side, we had like this kind of impact campaign where we want to show it as much as possible to Sudanese audience in the diaspora, but also to delegations and people that are, people that are working on Sudan's case, also to raise awareness in a more neutral side, because there's a lot of misinformation happening around, and there's always like one side that's emphasizing what they are doing. So we came in from this neutral side where we just talk about the civilians and how things are on that side. And also, I keep saying side for some reason. Okay. Effie's helping a lot, man.
No, it's an amazing movie. I mean, I just want to pipe in. You've got to see this movie and how you made like all the visual effects and the green screen. Like really tell the story.
This is, I wanted to say it from this is effing love.
No, that's what
yeah, so we wanted that, both sides, the festival run, but also on the community side. And we screened it a couple of times, in New York, to the Sudanese audience, to the delegations, and everybody loved the film. And now they have a better visual on what's happening on the ground in Sudan.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Imran, you've also got a film in competition in Panorama this year at Berlin. Another round of applause. And I wanted to ask you about the construction of the film, because it's been described as drawing from a lot of things that aren't necessarily to do with cinema. So, like, I think it was described as hip hop influenced. I don't know if is that correct or accurate?
Yeah, parts of it was inspired by Cape Townian hip hop, and the hip hop I listen to is, someone described it as sad hip hop, but what that meant was, what I liked about that was there was a reflection in that, because hip hop can often be laid with bravado, and what I loved was that there's also a space in hip hop for vulnerability and reflection by men, specifically. And I was really inspired by that, and that spoke to the tone of the film. It spoke to the way the characters walked, the way they talked as men, and yeah.
And what's the story? The story of the film? It's about a father who loses their child, right?
Yeah, so the film's called The Heart is a Muscle, and it's a story of a father whose son goes missing, and because of that incident, he acts out violently, and that opens up different other incidents from the past, and secrets come up. But what the film does is it looks at what fathers pass down to sons, and how we break those intergenerational cycles of trauma. But I really want to look at that through the lens of healing and forgiveness. And that's something I got really, really excited by. Yeah.
That's such an interesting mix of what you say there about a sort of, it's such a weird phrase, like hip hop swagger that you're describing, but an exploration of sort of male personality and how they express themselves, which is quite subversive in itself. How did you make sure that equally you were I don't know, pitching the right sort of tone to make sure that it didn't feel too awkward, or like you were like shoehorning in a message. How did you sort of do that?
I think the first thing I did was to ground the film in a human story, you know, to really root it in something that lives very clearly in humanity, not just male, but male, female, kids, older people. And once I figured that out, and once I understood how my character lives inside that, I think a lot of other parts of the film revealed itself to me. And I just had to make sure I was there to capture that, because, you know, sometimes it arrives, and if you don't catch it, it moves on, and that goes to someone else, and it kind of like says goodbye to you, you know? So it was important for me that I recognize when the kindness arrived, when the drama arrived, when the difficulties arrived, and how I deal with that, and how I tap into my ancestry, my father, the memories of my father, and the people around me. You know, I looked at my friends and my family, and the type of men they are. You know, how do they live as fathers, as brothers, as friends?
Oh, wonderful. To go back to the beginning, Effie, I wanted to ask, when you were...
I'm over it.
When you were setting up Dear White People, because like we were saying, like watching it back was so interesting, because like there's so much in it that is now so common and is ascribed to other films that came after, like the well, actually, I don't want to dig out any other films and say they copied you, but when you were setting up and trying to make it, was it a difficult sell?
You know, thank you so much for saying that. Setting up Dear White People was difficult, and I think that you have to think about the time that we were in. This was now I call it the backlash, like nobody likes DEI anymore, like it sort of went to the other side. And this was prior to that even becoming a thing, right? People thinking that diversity and inclusion is good business. It wasn't quite there yet. So we had to, which is what I think is interesting about the title of this whole panel, which is genre, right? Because genre is sometimes a Trojan horse, right? That we can sort of get in like, oh, you like horror movies? Oh, you like action? Oh, you like a satire? You know, you can sort of like, get in. And then they're in it. And then you can start going into talking about inclusion and race and sexuality and these things, but you have them already invested. That's what we had to do when we were setting up this movie, is I had to, like, it was, I think we can talk about it, but like, well, I'll keep it cute. I know Dana, my friend, is like, don't say that story. And she does, she gets it. You always have to have a good friend that's like, recording stop. No, so anyway, there was a studio that we went to, and they were like, Kendrick Lamar, not like us. Do you know what I mean? So they were, so I had to sort of figure out how to get for them to see the value of what we were doing, but also still keep like the sort of what we were doing. But I'm wrapping it up. I still feel that we all still have to do that today, don't we? I think that's sort of one of the reasons why we make the movies. I mean, I'm imagining like the movies that we make is that we are like, give you something that you're used to, but put our stink on it or our flavor on it. And I'm curious, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm here in Berlin and meeting, international filmmakers, is to see what it's like for you guys out here, if it's a different experience, if people here are like, oh yeah, we still see the, inclusion, diversity being good business. Because it is still good business, even if ideologically people don't care.
Do either any of you want to? Is that true? Do people here see it as good business? Do you think?
Oh, I love it like this. Nope. Okay.
I feel like I think we are. I think there was definitely a period in which, like specifically talking about my experience, how I'm seeing it in Germany, there was definitely, I feel like, a time like maybe 2020. Like maybe for a year after that, where I feel like there was like a kind of understanding, which was also coming a lot from like the US and kind of like ideas about that, but I think there was a lack definitely of thinking about what it means specifically in Germany, and I think it's a very different like historical context in which we are, and I feel like there's so much work that was already done, specifically in the US. I feel like that...
Wait, we've done work, US?
Yeah, yes. Like there's so much work. Like I studied in the US, so I was like there for 5 years, so there was a different... I could see that like the kind of like what maybe happened in the 80s and the 90s and like the kind of development of kind of like what we now call like equity and inclusion, all of those things. Like here, like this even though there's also specifically talking about like Black people who've been doing this work for also decades, but I feel like that it would reach a certain kind of like understanding in like studios, networks, production companies, film funds, all of that, I feel like was very, it was shockingly in the beginning when I first started to like enter the industry here. So I think there are a lot of filmmakers, there's a lot of activists who are doing the work, but I think there's a really lack of like, I don't know, I think a wrong word, but like a professionalism about equity and inclusion, about like, oh, what this means. There's so much knowledge already there, like how does it work, like that it is great business, and I feel like everyone is kind of has to find ways to persuade, to explain over and over and over again, and there's still like a show like Black Fruit that I made and other movies and that people have made are very much an exception still, and that's really unfortunate and also painful because there's so much talent here. But the idea of that we need these perspectives and that these perspectives are mainstream is still very much lacking, that understanding.
Does anybody else want to? I want.
Like this. No.
Thinking about your show, I was wondering, when you were pitching it, what were you telling people it was like kind of gonna be about? Like, what were your reference points? Because I guess it's kind of something that never existed in Germany before.
Yeah, there were so many references of TV shows, and especially I would also say TV shows like in the English speaking, like from the UK or from the US. But I think I was also, I think I was. What was I really pitching? I think I was pitching the story, and I also think I was trying to convince people, because in the beginning people were really telling me actively like this show won't work in Germany, like nobody's going to watch a show that has like 2 Black leads in it. They won't be interested if it's 2 queer people. They won't be interested if it's people in their 20s. Like it was like literally nothing like that I said was like nobody. They literally were like, this is not interesting, this is boring. They told me like to change my idea. Or talking about genres, which was really interesting, one person told me that I should make it like a crime thing, because it's huge here in Germany. Like a crime show. Like it would only work if there's like a really strong genre, and I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. But I was just like, it was really hard in the beginning, so I think I just kept pushing, and then I found a production company who had like they're called Jünglinge Film, who are like, queer and like anti-racist, like feminists, like they're specifically like are stating those words as like part of what their filmmaking is about, and they really saw like what I was trying to do, and so they had just made a film that was very successful, that was premiered here at Berlinale as well, which helped for people to listen to me. Like it was just literally it was like a change. Once they were like, oh, listen to this filmmaker, like people listened differently. I still of course had to like pitch, and like this took about 5 years for me to make, from the first idea to it coming out, and but yeah, it was definitely challenging throughout, but I think you just had to push it, and the more people came in the project, and to have writers and directors and the producers, it just really became a group effort, but it was definitely not something that like people weren't like, oh my God, we need this. Like I think the idea of like, oh, we should have a show. We should have a show that has more than one black character in the main cast. Like that was not something that people were like, oh, there's a lack in our network or something like that. That was just definitely something you still had to really much convince people why this is important and that there is an audience for it. And I'm so lucky. I feel like so lucky and happy that like we really proved them, because it was really like the show is really successful, and like from an audience standpoint, but also from critics. And but yeah, you still have to prove all the time. And I hope there are other shows now. Like I think it's really, we had like the last like maybe this is wrong, but I think it is right. I think the last film that came out, black German film that came out with black leads and a black director, was I think 3 years ago. Yeah, so.
We haven't got that much time left, so I've got a few last questions for you guys, but I'm going to ask like a slightly cheeky one now. Effie, I heard that when I was when I was getting ready for this and Googling you all, I read that you were maybe making a genre film right now, a horror film.
Oh yeah, I'm all in it.
Yeah, and I wondered if you could speak a little bit about that, but in particular, like the difference now from 10 years ago or 15 years ago to now.
Well, I just started in the business, you know. I'm like, what do you mean 15 years ago? I love genre. And like one of the films that I'm doing now is called Mr. Otim, which is a sports. So I call it a Black Rocky. But like, I know everyone's like Creed, but like it's an original. So like we're doing that movie. So that's another genre film that we're doing. I'm doing a horror movie called Haint. And Charlemagne the God is, I know, Charlemagne the God is doing it. And Basil Iwanek, who did like Monkey Man and those little movies called John Wick, they're my producing partners. And, but it's a Gullah Geechee horror movie and it's a culturally based, which I think is fascinating because we don't really ever get to see ourselves. I mean, like see an elevated genre, of course we're doing, only elevated. And then the other thing that we're doing, I'm really excited about, and this is the one that I, like people track, because I want to just make sure that like, I'm like, it should work. I'm doing this film called Soar Sorority, and it's with Gabrielle Union and Taraji Henson. And it really is, it's like Harry Potter set in an HBCU, right? And it's, right? Does it feel like I should work, right? Is this it? Can I retire on this one, maybe? And it literally is about Black and Indigenous, like from Yoruba, Santeria, like all the religions, like all of our magics that we have, because it's all of the other. I'm a big genre, I'm a nerd. Like I used to work for Tim Burton back in the day. Like I'm like, when I say like I go back, like I love genre and like weirdo little things. But we never get to see ourselves, like a lot of the magic and magical realism is sort of centered in Europe, right? Like we know about Celtic, we know about Nordic, but like, do we know about Yoruba? Do we know about like what's going on in like the islands? It's time. So, and I feel that now people of like, there's like the Children of Blood and Bone, there's other couple things that are happening that people are like, let's talk about that. Like what's going on? So I feel like there's a bit of a listening. I'm hoping that it's gonna make good business. Do you know what I mean? So like, cause usually you're right. And then thank you for saying that when you're like, one movie came out and that made your movie easier to talk about, right? Cause you're like, no, it's like this. You know, I'm hoping that we can sort of keep opening up doors. But as you also know, and then I'm gonna wrap it up, genre, it's good business because it's the one thing that travels globally, right? Do you know, especially horror is one of the ones that everybody, like every culture has a horror movie, every culture has like a going, so that's that.
Wonderful. Going to open up for questions really quickly if anybody wants to ask anything. Sure. And take my...
That's my friend.
Hi. First of all, it was amazing watching you guys all and listening to your stories and your journeys. I guess really what I want to do is make a comment, because everyone in this room is a creative, is a filmmaker, is a storyteller, and you know, we talked about going to others to get our stories made. We talked about it as good business, But I think the comment that we should all recognize in this room is that we are the global majority, and we should utilize each other to make stories that are authentic to our experiences.
Yes. That's what she's got for it.
Love that. Okay, I've been told I need to stop now, so I'm sorry if you had another...
Dana, you ruined it for me.
They heard what you were saying, and they were like, shut this stuff down.
Exactly, they're starting a revolution.
But no, thank you all for joining us, and please thank our wonderful guests.
Thank you.